Welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast
with our mom,
Misty Bailey. Tips and encouragement
for
real-life homeschooling
is headed your way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. I am Misty Bailey, blogger at Joy in the Journey and podcaster here at Joyfully Homeschooling. Today's Fess Up Friday interview is with my friend Leah Courtney from As We Walk Along the Road. And funny story, before I interviewed Leah, I have been thinking about and working on posts about overcoming the fear of homeschooling high school, because I'm there, guys. Like, I'm literally facing high school. And I did not know, even though I knew Leah online, I did not know that she had two homeschool high school graduates. So it was really fun because one of the fears she talks about overcoming is the fear of homeschooling high school. Isn't it so funny how God works these things out? So I'm super excited to share this interview with you, and I know it will be an encouragement to you. So without further ado, here is my interview with Leah Courtney. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. I am here today for another Fess Up Friday interview with my friend Leah Courtney. How are you, Leah?
I'm good.
Great. So can you start off with telling everybody a little bit about you and what you do in this online space in your homeschool?
Yes, I am a homeschool mom of 4, and I have been homeschooling for if we homeschool since birth, I've been homeschooling over 18 years. I have now 2 graduates. I have one who is a student at our local college and one who is going to be a student at our local community college, and I am still currently homeschooling 2 middle schoolers.
Oh, fun. And now, can you tell everybody where you blog at too?
Yes, I blog at aswewalkalongtheroad.com, and I've had the blog for a number of years. I started it as a journal of what we were doing in our homeschool so that I could show our family members who don't live locally, and then it kind of grew from there.
Okay, that sounds awesome. So now I'm interested here to chat with you because even though we kind of know each other online, I did not know that you've homeschooled graduates, because I am entering that middle school, high school years, and I'm slightly terrified. Like, my oldest is in 8th grade. So we might end up having to chat about that at some point.
It's a scary thing, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I anticipated that it was going to be.
Okay, good. So yeah, we are going to touch on that at some point today, because I'm going to have you mentor me here for a minute. Okay, so let's start off. The way we're going to do this is I'm going to share 4 questions, and we're just going to kind of talk about your struggles, fears, and homeschool joys. So are you ready?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, so the first question is, what is one struggle or fear you have had regarding homeschooling?
Well, it's funny because my biggest fear has been the transition into high school.
Yay.
When I first had, when they started into middle school, I would say, my oldest 2, I was very afraid of what high school was going to look like. And I had heard so many people talking about all these different things, standardized tests and college applications and college visits, and I just felt really overwhelmed by it. I knew that we wanted to keep homeschooling, but the thought of being responsible for all that was a little bit terrifying for me.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. I'm looking at it as, oh my goodness, what do I do? And where we live in a very rural area in Ohio. And when I started homeschooling, I only knew one other homeschool family, and they used the online public school. Those were really big in Ohio. And since then, a couple of them have shut down. But even now, as my daughter's in 8th grade and are in high school, out of our homeschool group, there's only 3 of them left that attend co-op that are 8th grade going into 9th grade. Everybody sends their kids to high school.
Yes, we had a lot of friends that started when they were in high school. Their kids started school.
Yeah. So, it's I don't have anybody leading the way for me here. So how have you overcome that fear? And if you haven't fully, which I'm assuming you have since you have some graduates here a little bit, how are you working on it?
Well, the first thing that I had to do was just sort of take a step back and realize that this was not, I was not going to fail here because I think that God's called us to homeschool. And so I knew that He was going to kind of guide us through this. So I had to take a step back and breathe. And then I just read as much as I could and went to as many conferences as I could and attended as many informational meetings as I could and just gathered information from everybody and every source that I knew how to. So the combination of those two things, and I did have a few friends who had homeschooled all the way through high school, and I had a good mix of people who were like very scheduled. Their kids were going to college no matter what. And then I had a few friends who were a little more laid back and they had a little bit more laid back approach to high school. So it was good to kind of see that the difference there.
Yeah. So what was one of the best resources that you found when you were in that transition period?
One of them was to go to the HSLDA website, and they have a whole homeschooling high school section. And that was a good way to kind of check the legal obligations and look for my state and find out what the obligations were for a diploma for my state. That was one big resource. And then the other resource is that we have a local high school co-op group. And my daughter took a class there in her 11th grade year. And so I was able to start talking to a lot of the parents in that group because obviously they have high schoolers. It's 9th through 12th graders that take classes. And that was really able to help me because I was able to see each person's different point of view and how they were approaching this whole high school thing.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I'm a member of HSLDA, and I have never looked into the resources on their website.
They do. They have a whole
That's
high
awesome.
school section on their website.
That is awesome. So what state are you in, Leah?
I'm in South Carolina.
South Carolina. Okay. All right. So did you have anything else you wanted to share about that?
Well, the biggest thing I think is to not get so caught up in comparison when you do get help from other people. Because when I first started and I would talk to friends, I felt like I had to do everything exactly the way that they had. So they would start telling me about all of the testing that their child had done and how they had applied to 10 different colleges. And I had one mom who she was trying to be helpful, but it made me so super stressed out because she showed me this huge high school portfolio she had been creating for her daughter from the time that she was going into high school, her 8th grade summer. And by the time she showed it to me, my oldest was in 11th grade, and she shows me this portfolio, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I've never done anything like that. My child is never going to get into college, and this is just going to be so bad. But the biggest thing I had to realize is that, yes, that can help give me some information, but not everybody's journey is the same. And so just because some other high school parent is finding success by doing one thing, that doesn't mean that's the successful path for us.
Yes. And I think that's so important to remember because even here, like I said, where we are, there's not very many people who are homeschooling high school. And the ones who have, it's kind of sad because like they participate in co-op up until like middle school. And then they start worrying about, oh, well, we have to do this for high school, or they've got so much work now because we're facing high school. And they kind of pull out of co-op and pull out of that, I don't say socialization opportunities because I don't want to sound cliche, but in all honesty, that's what it is. And then
Right.
they're not there. Like if we had more kids, we could offer more. We could offer more for the middle schoolers and high schoolers. But instead, everybody,
Right.
like I said, they either give up. I don't want to say give up because that's not the right word, but they follow that pressure of sending to high school, or they just kind of fall into that we've got so much work we have to do to prepare for high school, if that makes sense.
Right.
And
And we had some friends like that.
yeah, and I think it's sad. I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm facing this right here, and this has been a big discussion in our home this summer. So I'm so glad we ended up getting to talk about this. So okay. So the next question is, what is one thing you have learned as a homeschool mom?
Probably one of the biggest is that My children are not alike, even though we are homeschooling all of them, even though they've grown up in the same family, even though I am the same teaching them, they have different needs and different preferences. When we first started out, we did so much together as a family. That's the way that I homeschooled. We did a lot of unit studies and we did a lot of things that the whole family could do. So I had curriculum that I could use with all of them, all four of them, all different ages. But as they got into middle school and high school and worked more independently, I had to sort of accept the fact that different ones could use different materials and be successful. And it wasn't always what would have been my first choice for the material because they don't learn the same way that I do. My daughter loves to read like I do, and my oldest daughter that has graduated. So she loves to read and can learn anything from a book. You just give her the book, she'll read it, loves it. Well, I just loved that. And so I was able to give her all literature-based curriculum for high school, and she had her schedule, and she read all these different books. It was great. Then my son came along. He's not a reader. So even though I would have liked to give him all of that same stuff for high school and say, here, read this great literature and do these activities, that was not for him. And so we had to look for different choices for him. And I think that's been something that I've learned gradually along the way with all of the kids is that they're each different. They each have different learning needs and they each have different learning styles. And part of the reason we homeschool is to accommodate for that. And so I have to do that even if it's not my first choice.
Oh, yes. I'm like sitting here nodding my head. That's as my girls, we were the same way, like as they as they've gotten older, like we've separated them. And, like my oldest, for example, loves Knotgrass history, loves it. And I love it. But my middle, like she hates it. Like she despises it. She despises anything history. So I was like in a conundrum, like, what do? Do I force her to use this because I already have it? Or do I let her find something else that interests her more? And I let her choose, and she spent the whole year, well, not the whole year, but a good portion of the year studying horses for history. But loved it and learned so much. And next year she's studying Greek mythology. Out of every booth at the homeschool convention that I took her to, she chose Greek mythology. I'm like, who are you? Where did you come from? But I think that's important though. Like, I think that's very important for us to learn that it's okay. Like if our kids have different interests, if our kids have different learning styles, it may not be the best choice economically or even time-wise for us, but it is the best for our kids if that's the way that they learn and if that's the way that we're not going to squelch that love of learning by forcing something upon them that is completely not what they're into or not how they learn. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I agree.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I think that everybody struggles with and has to learn. And yeah, I love that you said that. Okay, so the last question I have is, how do you find joy in your homeschool day?
One of the biggest things, and this is something that I guess I sort of knew was going to be a benefit of homeschooling, but it didn't sink in right at first, and especially when my kids were younger, it was a little bit harder to grasp this, but I have loved the relationship that I have with my kids. And I've really found it as they've gotten older into middle school and high school, especially. When I had four little kids at home, my kids are fairly close. So I had 6 and under when my oldest was 6. And so as they've grown up, I've had a lot of little kids at home. And there were many years when it was just me, the only adult home. My husband would be at work all day, and I was here with all these little kids all day long. And I mean, I wanted a break sometimes, and I would think, what in the world am I doing with this whole homeschooling thing? Because I could be sending these kids to school and they could be going away for part of the day. I could talk to real adults. But as they have gotten older, I have loved the relationship that we've had with each of the kids. And now that they're middle school and high school and beyond, that's something that's so special to me because we still have that good relationship. And it comes from all of the time that we've spent together. And knowing that and being able to see the back end of it now, sort of that's such an encouragement to me. And it makes me feel so good all of that time that we've spent together, even when it was hard, even when they were all little, and even when I felt like I was going to go crazy because I didn't have another adult to talk to. It was all worth it. And now we have these really good relationships that I can really take joy in.
I love that. So, did you like teenagers whenever your kids were little?
I did not.
Didn't.
And
I didn't.
no. And I worried about the teenage years.
Yeah.
I was not so sure how this was going to go. I taught for one semester when my oldest two were 3 and 2. My husband lost his job. And so I have a teaching certificate, or I did then. I haven't kept it current, but I had a teaching certificate and had a degree in special education. And so I taught for a semester at our high school. I did a permanent sub for the semester while he was out of work. And that was my first experience with high school because before the kids were born, I taught elementary school. But these high school kids, I was like, no, this is not going to be fun. And I don't know what I'm doing because at that point I had 2 and then there were 2 more. And I was like, oh my goodness, now they're all going to be teenagers. But it has really been different than I expected.
Yeah, I found the same way. So, because I did not like teenagers. I like mine now, but I did
Yes.
not like them. Yeah. So you said something there about whenever you had your 4 littles and you were overwhelmed and, wondering what you were doing. What would you say to the mom that is in that season right now, that is in the season of a bunch of littles? What would you say to her to kind of encourage her to keep her going on?
The biggest thing, and I know you don't see it when you're in the middle of it, but it will end and it's only a stage. I think my hardest year of homeschool, and I tell everybody now when I talk to moms with little people especially, one of the hardest years of homeschooling for me was the year that I had a first grader and kindergartner and a toddler and was pregnant with the other one because my toddler was a wild child and she was not content to do anything. So she wanted to be in the room where we were. But when she was in the room where we were, she was like this little whirling dervish who would go through the room picking up markers and scissors and glue and anything she shouldn't have and making use of them while I was trying to do something with the other 2. So it was really, really crazy that year. And then the next year when I had a toddler and a preschooler, it was still a little bit crazy because she was still a little bit wild preschooler and she would lead the toddler into trouble. So if it was ever quiet, I knew I needed to go look for the 2 of them because they were likely doing something I didn't want them to do. We had to try to fit a lot in naps, let them get settled down for a nap and try to do things in the afternoon. So it was hard. But the biggest thing is looking back, I realized what a short amount of time the craziness was. So I would just encourage young moms to hold on and know that the benefits are coming and to know that the craziness is not going to last forever, even though it seems like it will when you're in the midst of it. And to try to find the moments to enjoy in the midst of the craziness, because that was something special too. And I would just stop in the day and stop trying to fight it, stop trying to rush around picking up after everybody and keeping everybody from killing each other and themselves. If I would just stop and look at the joy around me, look at the fun that they were having, look at the time that we had to be together, take a deep breath and realize that I could enjoy the moment, and then also realize it was a moment and it wasn't going to last forever.
Yeah, I love that. I always say we have seasons. Like there are just seasons in homeschooling, and um those early days are rough. Like, I mean, I know when my son was born and he threw our home up he threw our home for a loop, and I wondered how we were ever going to make it through. And yeah, I mean, I look back now and I mean, all those days were worth it. All those hard days, all those ugly days. they're worth it when you start to see the fruit of your labor.
Yes.
And it takes a while to see that. I think it takes a while, but I love that. I think that's very encouraging, especially now that, you're on the other end of it,
Right.
Yeah. So thank you, Leah, so much for that. Was there anything else you wanted to share with everybody?
I think the biggest thing, and I kind of mentioned this before, but to realize that we don't need to compare ourselves to other homeschool moms because everybody's going to have a different path.
Yeah.
Even with my two older ones, my oldest is in college, it's a college that's local to us, but it is a regular university, a 4-year liberal arts university. My second has no interest in that at all. And he's not going to go to a regular college. He's going to take some classes at our local tech school, but he doesn't have any desire to go to a 4-year university and graduate with a liberal arts degree. And I think one of the biggest things is to realize that just because other people's kids take a certain path, that doesn't mean that mine have to do that or that I'm slacking if I don't do that. Because I think so many of us get caught up in this trap of having to compete with what everybody else is doing. And, I just heard this mom talk about Latin and music lessons and taking the SAT 5 times. And then we feel pressured like that's something that we have to do, but it's not. And we put that pressure on ourselves. And then we cause ourselves to fail because we're struggling to keep up with that.
Yeah, and I think that's so easy to do. I mean, I think that's so easy to do. Especially, I think you're really I don't know what the word is to it, but you're really susceptible to that, like your first couple years of homeschooling, and then I think
Yes.
you're really susceptible again as you enter into those high school years. I think those are the two areas, the two seasons whenever you've really got to watch that comparison. You really
Yes.
have to watch it. Yeah. So, okay, so can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at the blog aswewalkalongtheroad.com. So it's just as we walk along the road, all stuck together, aswewalkalongtheroad.com. And I blog and share a lot of literature-based homeschool resources, as well as encouraging articles for homeschool moms. And I have printables, and I also have a literature unit study, and hopefully more to come of those. So you can find me there.
Awesome. Now, do you have anything by chance related to high school, like any high school resources that you would want to send me, and we can put those in the show notes?
I do have some homeschooling posts for high school.
Yeah.
I don't have any high school printed material, but I'll be glad to share some of those posts. I blog about homeschooling high school, but it's more fun to make materials for the little people.
Oh, I know. High school's like not as fun. Like once you get into middle and high school, it is just not as fun.
It's just not. But I do have some homeschooling high school posts. I'll be glad to send you those.
Yeah, send me a link to maybe 2 posts that you want in the show notes, and then maybe a link to like your store or something, and we'll make sure we put those in the show notes.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, well, Leah, thank you so much for chatting with me. I really, really appreciate it. And I will be connecting with you too about helping me get through high school.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. You have a good day, Leah.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
So, what did you guys think? If you are facing high school, I hope Leah helped alleviate some of those fears for you. And if you're in a season of littles, I hope she has encouraged you to look past the season, know that it will end, and it is worth every hard day of homeschooling. So that is it for this episode of the Joyfully Homeschooling podcast. I hope it encouraged you, and I hope it helped inspire you to head out and have a more joyful homeschool. Have a great day, guys. Bye.